I think the following thought will occur to some people listening to our discussion up to this point. You have catalogued a very formidable list of defects in Marxist theory and prediction. The failure to predict the future success of capitalism, the anti-libertarian element in Marxism, the absence of any theory or attitude to the individual. You've also talked about other entirely new theories like Freudianism, which came on the scene after Marx and therefore couldn't have been accommodated by Marx in his outlook. A lot of people will say, well, since you were so conscious of this enormous range of defects in Marxism, why did you want to remain Marxists? I mean, why try to hang on to a discredited or falsified theory? Why not try to liberate your thought categories from that altogether and actually look at reality afresh?
Easy answer, because I do not believe that the theory as such has been falsified. What has happened is that some of the concepts of Marxian theory, as I said before, will have to be re-examined. But this is not something from outside brought into Marxist theory. That is something Marxist theory itself, as a historical theory, demands. Now, it is relatively easy for me to enumerate, to give you a catalogue of the decisive concepts of Marx which have been corroborated in the development of capitalism. The concentration of economic power, the fusion of economic and political power, the increasing intervention of the state into the economy, the increasing difficulties in stemming the decline in the rate of profit, the need for engaging in a neo-imperialism in order to create markets and possibilities of enlarged accumulation of capital, and so on. I think this is a formidable catalogue, and it speaks a lot for Marxian theory.
Well, I don't want to get into a political argument. I'd love to do that, as a matter of fact, but, well, the purpose of this programme is to elicit your views on a further range of topics, but I can't let what you've said just pass like that. I mean, to take only the first two of your list, you said that there's been increasing concentration of economic power, but surely through the invention of the joint stock company, the ownership of capital has been more widely dispersed than ever before. You talk about the convergence of economic and political power. I would say yes, but what has happened in the West, at least, is that the decisive control over the economy has passed into the hands of elected politicians, who in the democracies are directly elected by the mass of the people, and they take the basic economic decisions in the society.
Well, you know that with your first statement about the joint stock companies, you express one of the main concepts of Marxist revisionism, introduced first by Engels himself. They considered the joint stock companies with a dispersed ownership already as pre-forms of a socialist society. Now we know today that this is obviously wrong, and you will not maintain that, for example, in the great multinational corporations, the stockholders control the policy, national and global, of these corporations. It is not the ownership alone that matters, but the control of the productive forces, which is decisive. As far as the state is concerned and the role of the politicians, do you believe that the politicians make their decisions entirely by themselves as free individuals, or isn't there some kind of link between the policy makers and the great economic powers in the society?
Well, the politicians certainly aren't dominated by the great economic powers, but anyway, I think I will have to let that pass reluctantly and get back to the Frankfurt School. We've talked in general terms about the Frankfurt School. Mm-hmm. I mentioned two or three of the individuals in my opening remarks, but I think it would be especially interesting to hear just a word from you about who the main individuals were and what they were like, because after all, they were your close friends and associates.
Well, Horkheimer was the director of the institute. he was not only a thoroughly trained and knowledgeable philosopher and sociologist, but also, in a strange sense, a financial wizard who could take care very well of the material basis, as it were, of the Institute, not only in Germany, but also afterwards in the United States. A brilliant man, and nothing that was written in the periodical of the Institute and afterwards was written without previous discussion with him and with the other collaborators at the Institute. Adorno, a genius. I have to call him a genius, because I have never seen anyone who was, as you already mentioned, so equally well at home in philosophy, sociology, psychology, music, whatever it may be. It was absolutely amazing. When he talked, it could be printed without any change. It was perfectly ready for print. Then are those who are unjustly neglected or forgotten. Leo Lowenthal, the literary critic of the Institute, Franz Neumann, a brilliant legal philosopher, Otto Kirchheimer, equally well familiar in legal philosophy, Frederick Pollock, and especially Hendrik Grossmann, the most orthodox of all Marxist economists I have ever met. He predicted the collapse of capitalism for a very specific year he gave. In the meantime, it turned out it wasn't quite correct.
Like the medieval churchmen predicting the end of the
exactly,
world. Yes.
Exactly. Yeah. And Pollock, who after all wrote, I think, the first article in which he tried to argue that there are no compelling internal reasons why capitalism should collapse.
Now, one of the things that you all as a group pioneered in the perhaps late 20s and certainly early 30s was the shift of interest in Marxist studies back from the works of the mature Marx to the works of the earlier Marx, the things he wrote when he was more directly under the influence of Hegel. And one of the many things, I think, that came out of that, which has been of continuing influence ever since, is an interest in the notion of alienation. I think alienation in its modern sense was coined by Hegel, taken up and given a new significance by Marx, and then almost, you can say, fell out of Western thought for nearly 100 years. And you, plural, were instrumental in bringing it back, weren't you? It would be very interesting to hear your comments on the importance of this idea.
Well, that's a very complicated story. According to Marx, alienation was a socio-economic concept. And it meant, basically, this is a very brutal abbreviation, that under capitalism, men and women could not, in their work, fulfill their own individual humane faculties and needs. That this was due to the capitalist mode of production itself, and could only be remedied by radically changing this mode of production. Now today, the concept of alienation has been expanded and extended to such an extent that this original content is almost entirely lost. An extension all too easy, which I consider not only premature, but also wrong. Because, for example, not every kind of trouble or problem someone has with his girlfriend or a boyfriend is necessarily due to the capitalist mode of production.
In other words, you think that the idea has been trivialized.
Trivialized, and it very needs to be restored.
Yes, and that it's in its original significance, it is of fundamental importance.
Fundamental.